So I think, the next thing if we can talk about is, because I think while they are together and while Yazdi has sort of brought them together, each one of them also has a very special story behind them. So I think and you are very well versed with those stories, and you
as well as I can be. They're very brief, but Yazdi, I sat with him and he kind of explained to me, to the best of his knowledge. At his age, he's forgotten a lot of things. So the R69, but the sidecar, was the one he used to adore. There was this Parsi family that used to gentleman used to ride the bike with his wife and his 3 daughters. He remembers watching them as a kid and absolutely in awe of this bike, and he would just drool and salivate over it every time it kind of went through. And I think he went up and he met them and he discussed, and at that time, and that was really his initial interest into bike. Eventually in the 70s he did get a Honda 250 which he had, and which he showed off, and he rode.
And he used to ride a lot. I mean,
he used to already ride. He had a huge passion for riding. In those days there was a lot of Parsis who owned
amazing
sports bikes, and they loved bikes. So the old man grew old, he passed away, and he passed it on to his son-in-law, who was Mr. Kama. And Mr. Kama and the old original owner's daughter Yasmin used to again use the bike, ride around. And Yazdi at that time had already well into I think he had started working and stuff, and become friends, and always met and discussed things. And in about 78, 79, Mr. Kama approached him and asked him whether he would like to buy the bike, because he knew how passionate he was about it. And Yazdi was extremely excited. I mean, he really, that was his dream, So he sold his Honda to be able to afford, obviously put some more money in, and then got this and rode this and enjoyed this with his family for all the way up to 2000. Or early 2000s. After which he and his brother Rohi decided to strip it and try and restore it to the best of their ability. So this paint job that they've done is all done by hand by him.
He and stuff. I think
all the pinstriping he's done himself.
And he obviously loved this one the most because, I mean, like I said, this was the one which is in his home.
This was the first one. So he loved this the most. Also, it included his family. So he has a lot of memories. I have seen photographs with my wife actually as a kid on the tank. So there's a little connection with us as well. And they used to go off on holidays to Udwada and these Gujarat jaunts and have weekends there. And the bike was always around with them.
So he's somewhat of a legend in the Parsi, Dadar Parsi colony.
Oh yeah. I mean, they've had so much fun. So many stories about them when they were on flight, and the mischief that they used to be up to.
Even when I posted something on Instagram about this bike, I got so many replies about, Yazdi uncle this, and we saw this and that, and So these bikes, I mean, his passion for bikes was well recognized also. I mean,
it's been so many years. I mean, since the 70s, he's been constantly at it.
bit on the technical side of this. So obviously this is a R69,
69, she's a 600cc
600cc,
bike.
and
And we had to take the engine off to bring her down from the floor.
the engine was actually in there, but in order to bring her down, we had to dismantle the whole thing.
And bring her down.
Yeah, and the sidecar was in the kitchen, above the kitchen sink.
Above the kitchen sink. He remembers it riding so smoothly. At some point of time, he disconnected the sidecar and he used to just ride it on solo.
Yeah.
And she's just beautifully balanced.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm excited to put her back, and I think I would definitely put the sidecar back onto her.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking forward to doing is obviously riding her with the passenger in the sidecar. And the interesting part about the sidecar is it's on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
So in India, when you're driving, he's going to be facing the traffic.
Yes. In fact, his son says, I never want to sit in the sidecar ever again because it's just so scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that was this bike. And then which was his second one?
The second was the R50.
Okay, which is that one?
Which is a very interesting story also. Now, the R50 was actually owned by a very, very dear friend of his, Rusi engineer,
Right.
whose son is a very dear friend of mine, Feroz. They both, they lived in London.
Right.
And Rusi was actually working on the BMW assembly line in the 70s in Germany.
Right.
Very passionate about the bike. He knew everything about all the bikes. I mean, he was really Yazdi's guru, as Yazdi refers him.
Yeah.
He would help Yazdi with everything, from sourcing parts and finding things, going with him to the shops. And Yazdi would only buy it if Mr. Engineer would approve. It was like the last say and everything.
Right.
So he rode the bike eventually from Germany to UK, where they lived.
Right.
And they had another close friend, Mr. Rustam, who owned an Irani restaurant at Kolaba.
But this bike, when he moved to England, he was there for a couple of years. The bike was there in England for a couple of years.
The bike was there for half a year.
Okay, so you rode it in London.
73 July is when he brought it to the UK.
Okay.
No, sorry, 73 July is when he brought her back to India.
Okay.
And she was registered here.
Right.
So he had her for a few years in the UK and rode it, and then decided to ride down all the way to Bombay. So he came via Turkey and the old route.
Right.
And that must have been something.
But he did that in order to bring the bike to his friend, or he was just going to bring it?
I would believe so, because July she was registered here, and August the bike ownership was transferred.
Right.
So I believe he must have brought it down with that intention.
So you think that his friend who was in India was very keen, and maybe he spoke to him and said, if you're selling it,
that's right.
Me. And rather than just sell it to him, he decided it'd be fun to ride it.
To have the adventure
the last this thing, hurrah with the bike.
Yeah.
And then had it over.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how she came to India.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, amazing. In those days, there were so many stories of people, driving up or driving cars down from the UK. So he came in on the bike and he sold it to this Rustam, who owned an Irani restaurant. And Rustam used it for many, many years and then became old. And when he passed on, the brother-in-law took over the bike.
Okay.
And he was a gentleman from Worli Seaface. He took over the bike and used it for a while.
Yeah.
Then when he wanted to sell the bike, Yazdi got to know Yazdi approached him and he told Yazdi, no, I don't want to sell the bike to you. I'm getting a lot of offers from celebrities and in those days from Bollywood stars and stuff. So he was keen on selling it, but he had a price in mind, which was a high price.
Right.
And Yazdi was quite adamant. And he called up Rusi in London and said, look, you have to speak to Rustam and tell him, look, you've got to get this. Give the bike to me. So after a lot of thought, Rusi called up Rustam in Kolaba and said, look, I'm thinking of buying. If you want to sell, I want to buy the bike back for my son, Feroz, who's now eligible to ride.
Right.
And he kind of accepted that. So the bike was transferred back to Rusi's name.
Okay.
In India.
Right.
Yazdi was appointed to go pick up the bike. And then he kept it and transferred it to himself a few years later. He loves this bike, but he has his own collection of BMWs in London even today.
Right.
Some old classics and some new.
Yeah.
So that passion kind of
it'd be great
continue.
Have him come down on one of his trips.
Yeah, he's quite excited to do that.
To reunite with the bike and also for us to show it to him once we finish with the restoration.
Yeah.
That would be quite special.
I think even Yazdi's kids are keen to come and see the bikes once they're restored.
Yeah. We have a responsibility in doing that and some level of pressure as well.
Yeah.
Get it right. Yeah. So again, an amazing bike and another fascinating story. It's like see how it's connecting people. And relationships with each sort of change in owner. And therefore, again, they've survived.
Yeah.
So many of them come and have just gone.
Yeah, they've gone.
Yeah. So this is the third one. And I think one of my most favorites.
Yeah.
Which is the
R69S.
R69S.
So that's the sports version of the 69.
Right. It's the same 500cc.
It's the same 600.
600.
It would be a little bigger than the 600 because the only difference in this bike is the size of the piston rings.
Right.
So probably a little bit more, 25cc more.
Yeah.
But it was the sports bike with the gear ratios, I think, were a little different.
Right.
Than the touring bikes. On all the bikes, he has fitted the touring sumps, which are bigger oil sump.
Right.
So that in India, the oil would run a bit cooler.
Right. Those were his modifications.
Something that he did. Yeah. We've got the original oil sumps and we've got the long range ones.
Right.
What he calls the long range ones.
Yeah.
She's a lovely bike. She was actually in India with a tourist, somebody who had ridden the bike down from Europe.
Yeah.
And sold to a guy called Adil Mistry.
Okay.
Now, on the registration, I saw that it's owned by Adil Mistry, but a company called Trustwell Limited based in Chennai. And so he must have got the bike off this tour. He made friends with this guy. Obviously, he loved the bike.
Yeah.
Made friends with this guy. And when it was time for the guy to go back, he needed money. So he sold the bike to...
I think a lot of that happened in those days when the foreign guys used to come down.
Yeah, a lot.
I remember speaking to my father-in-law as well, and he was telling me also in Nepal, this used to happen. These guys, tourists used to come down, travel around, and then they used to sell to a local, and that was their fare back.
That was it, yeah. So he sold the bike to Adil. Adil used it for many, many years. And when Adil grew old, couldn't take care of the bike, he sold it to a gentleman in Bandra called Gav Palkhiwala. And Gav rode it for years. And he was a good friend of Rohi, who's Yazdi's brother. they got to know about the bike.
Right.
And
And all the brothers were also passionate about bikes, right? Apart from Yazdi.
Yazdi, Rohi, and Dali, all three, they loved bikes. They
Loved
were all
bikes,
crazy about bikes. So.
Okay.
So when Gabe wanted to sell the bike, he sold it to Rohi, Yazdi's brother.
Okay.
And Rohi had kept this in Jogeshwari in his house. Also, not in the bedroom, but also in the house.
Right.
And Yazdi and Rohi used to work on these two bikes. Yazdi would go to Jogeshwari to work on the RS. And Rohi would come to the others to work on this.
Right.
They were both. And then Rohi got very busy because his daughter was an international cyclist. She was taking part in the national champion, the Asian Games and stuff. So that, I think, took a lot of attention for him, obviously being the father and, pushing her cycling profession.
Right.
The bike took a back seat, which is when he gifted the bike to Yazdi.
Okay.
And then Yazdi got hold of it. And then all the three bikes have been with him since.